Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf. Today we're diving into a book that challenges everything you thought you knew about success. Did you know that in elite Canadian youth hockey leagues, 40% of the players are born between January and March? Or that Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and other tech titans were all born within about 18 months of each other? These aren't mere coincidences. They're clues to understanding the hidden factors that shape extraordinary achievement. I'm your host, and in this episode, we're exploring Malcolm Gladwell's fascinating book, Outliers, The Story of Success. Prepare to have your assumptions about talent, hard work, and achievement turned upside down. We often think of wildly successful people as outliers, extraordinary individuals who rise above their circumstances through sheer genius and determination. But Gladwell argues that the story of success is far more complex and interesting than that. He shows us that where we come from, when we're born, and the cultural legacies we inherit play a huge role in determining our paths to success. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll unpack some of Gladwell's most compelling insights. We'll explore how small advantages can compound over time, why it takes about 10,000 hours to achieve mastery in any field, and how cultural backgrounds shape our approach to work and communication. By the end of this episode, you'll have a new lens through which to view success, both in your own life and in the world around you. Let's start with what Gladwell calls the Matthew effect, named after the biblical passage that states, "For unto everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away, even that which he hath." In other words, advantage begets advantage. Gladwell illustrates this principle with a fascinating study of Canadian hockey players. In Canada, the eligibility cutoff for age class hockey is January 1st. This means that a child born on January 2nd could be playing alongside someone who doesn't turn the same age until the end of the year. At young ages, this age difference translates to significant differences in physical maturity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Coaches looking for the most promising players naturally tend to select the bigger, more coordinated kids, who are often just the ones born earlier in the year. These selected players then get more practice time, better coaching, and more game experience. Over time, this small initial advantage of being born earlier in the year compounds, leading to a significantly higher chance of becoming a professional hockey player. In fact, Gladwell found that among elite hockey players, 40% are born between January and March, 30% between April and June, 20% between July and September, and only 10% between October and December. This pattern holds true not just in hockey, but in many other sports and even in education. Think about the implications of this. We often attribute success in sports or academics to innate talent or hard work. But here we see that something as arbitrary as the month of your birth can play a huge role in determining your opportunities and, ultimately, your success. This principle extends far beyond sports. Gladwell gives examples from education, showing how children who are older relative to their classmates tend to be placed in gifted programs more often, score higher on standardized tests, and are more likely to attend college. The Matthew effect suggests that many of the advantages we attribute to merit are actually the result of arbitrary factors that compound over time. So, what can we do with this knowledge? For one, it challenges us to look more critically at our systems for identifying and nurturing talent. Are we truly giving everyone an equal opportunity to succeed? Or are we unknowingly favoring some groups over others based on arbitrary factors? As parents, educators, or managers, how can we be more aware of these hidden advantages and work to level the playing field? Now, let's move on to another of Gladwell's key insights, the 10,000-hour rule. This rule suggests that the key to achieving world-class expertise in any skill is, to a large extent, a matter of practicing the correct way for a total of around 10,000 hours. Gladwell illustrates this rule with several compelling examples. One is the Beatles. Before they became international sensations, the Beatles played in Hamburg, Germany, as a struggling young band. But here's the kicker. They didn't just play a few gigs in Hamburg. Between 1960 and 1962, the Beatles performed live in Hamburg countless times. By the time they had their first burst of success in 1964, they had performed live an estimated 1,200 times. Most bands today don't perform 1,200 times in their entire careers. This extraordinary amount of practice allowed the Beatles to hone their craft, experiment with their sound, and develop the musical style that would eventually captivate the world. They weren't born musical geniuses. They became great through an incredible amount of focused practice. Another example Gladwell provides is Bill Gates. While Gates is often portrayed as a computer whiz kid who dropped out of Harvard to start Microsoft, the reality is more nuanced. Gates had the fortunate opportunity to gain access to a computer in 1968 at the age of 13, when computers were rare and expensive. He then spent countless hours programming, often sneaking out at night to use the computer lab at the University of Washington. By the time Gates dropped out of Harvard to found Microsoft, he had been programming practically non-stop for 7 consecutive years. As Gates himself said, "I had a better exposure to software development at a young age than I think anyone did in that period of time, and all because of an incredibly lucky series of events." The 10,000-hour rule doesn't just apply to famous outliers. Gladwell cites studies of violinists which found that the elite performers had averaged 10,000 hours of practice by age 20, while the merely good students had averaged 8,000 hours, and the future music teachers just over 4,000 hours. Now, it's important to note that the 10,000-hour rule isn't about just mindlessly repeating the same actions over and over. It's about deliberate practice, focused, intentional efforts to improve performance. It's also worth noting that 10,000 hours is an average, not a magical threshold. The key insight is that becoming world-class at anything takes an enormous amount of time and dedicated effort. This has profound implications for how we think about talent and success. It suggests that the notion of the naturally gifted genius who achieves greatness without effort is largely a myth. Even Mozart, often cited as the quintessential child prodigy, didn't produce his greatest work until he had been composing for more than 20 years. The 10,000-hour rule also highlights the importance of opportunity. Accumulating 10,000 hours of practice isn't just a matter of individual determination. It requires time, resources, and often the support of others. Bill Gates was fortunate to have access to a computer at a time when such access was rare. The Beatles were lucky to get the gig in Hamburg that allowed them to accumulate so much practice time. This brings us to another key theme in Outliers, the role of cultural legacies in shaping success. Gladwell argues that the culture we belong to and the legacies passed down by our forebears shape the patterns of our achievement in ways we cannot begin to imagine. One fascinating example Gladwell explores is the concept of the culture of honor and its impact on violence in the American South. He traces this cultural legacy back to the settlement patterns of the United States. The American South was largely settled by herdsmen from the borderlands of Scotland and northern England. In these regions, unlike agricultural areas, wealth was easily stolen, and so a culture developed where men had to project strength and respond aggressively to any slight or challenge to protect their livelihood. Gladwell argues that this culture of honor persisted long after the original economic conditions that produced it had vanished. He cites modern-day experiments showing that young men from Southern backgrounds react more aggressively to insults than their Northern counterparts, even when they've grown up in non-herding cultures. This cultural legacy, Gladwell suggests, helps explain the higher rates of violence in the Southern United States, particularly violence related to insults or challenges to one's reputation. It's a striking example of how the attitudes and behaviors shaped by our cultural background can persist across generations and continue to influence our actions in ways we might not even realize. Another compelling example of cultural legacy that Gladwell explores is the impact of Confucian culture on math performance among Asian students. He argues that the tradition of wet rice agriculture in many Asian countries instilled a cultural emphasis on persistence and hard work that translates well to success in mathematics. Wet rice agriculture is incredibly labor-intensive, requiring meticulous care and attention to detail. It also has a direct correlation between effort and reward. The harder you work, the more rice you produce. Gladwell suggests that this cultural background produces the approach to problem-solving characterized by diligence and persistence, qualities that are highly advantageous in mastering mathematics. This cultural legacy, Gladwell argues, helps explain the consistently high performance of students from countries like China, South Korea, and Japan on international math tests. It's not that these students are inherently more talented at math, but rather that their cultural background has equipped them with attitudes and approaches that are particularly well suited to mathematical thinking. These examples illustrate a crucial point. Our cultural backgrounds shape our attitudes, behaviors, and approaches to problems in ways that can have a significant impact on our chances of success. This doesn't mean we're prisoners of our cultural legacy, but it does suggest that understanding these influences can help us navigate our paths more effectively. Now, let's turn to another key insight from Outliers: the importance of practical intelligence and effective communication. Gladwell illustrates this concept through a comparison of two highly intelligent individuals, Christopher Langan and Robert Oppenheimer. Christopher Langan is a man with an extraordinarily high IQ, so high that it can't be accurately measured by standard IQ tests. He's been called the smartest man in America. Yet, despite his incredible intelligence, Langan struggled to succeed in college and has spent much of his life working blue-collar jobs. In contrast, Robert Oppenheimer, while certainly brilliant, was not off the charts in the same way as Langan. Yet Oppenheimer went on to become one of the most renowned physicists of the 20th century, leading the Manhattan Project that developed the atomic bomb. The key difference, Gladwell argues, is not raw intelligence, but practical intelligence, the ability to read situations correctly and interact effectively with others. Oppenheimer, despite some serious missteps, including an attempt to poison his tutor, was able to talk his way out of expulsion from university. He had the social skills to navigate the world of academia and high-level government projects. Langan, on the other hand, struggled with these practical aspects of success. When he lost a scholarship due to a paperwork error, he couldn't effectively advocate for himself to university administrators. He didn't know how to ask for what he needed or how to make the system work in his favor. This comparison highlights the crucial role of communication skills and social intelligence in achieving success. Raw talent or intelligence isn't enough. You also need to be able to effectively convey your ideas, negotiate with others, and navigate social systems. Gladwell ties this back to cultural legacy as well. He argues that middle and upper-class parents tend to instill in their children a sense of entitlement, not in the negative sense, but in the sense of being comfortable interacting with authority figures, advocating for themselves, and negotiating to get what they need. This is part of what he calls concerted cultivation, a parenting style that emphasizes developing children's reasoning and social skills. In contrast, children from less privileged backgrounds often develop a sense of constraint in institutional settings. They're less comfortable questioning authority or advocating for themselves, which can limit their opportunities even when they're highly intelligent or talented. This insight has profound implications for education and professional development. It suggests that, in addition to teaching technical skills or subject matter knowledge, we should also be focusing on developing students' and employees' practical intelligence, their ability to communicate effectively, navigate social situations, and advocate for themselves. As we wrap up our exploration of Outliers, let's recap some of the key insights we've covered. First, success is not just about individual talent and hard work. It's also heavily influenced by hidden advantages and extraordinary opportunities, the month you're born, the era you grow up in, the cultural legacy you inherit. All of these factors play a crucial role in shaping your path to success. Second, achieving mastery in any field typically requires around 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. This highlights the importance of starting early and having the opportunity to put in those hours of focused work. Third, our cultural backgrounds shape our attitudes and approaches to work and problem solving in ways that can significantly impact our chances of success. Understanding these cultural influences can help us navigate our paths more effectively. Finally, practical intelligence, the ability to read social situations and interact effectively with others, is just as crucial for success as raw talent or knowledge. Developing these skills should be a key focus in education and professional development. So, what can we take away from all this? For one, it encourages us to look at success more holistically. Instead of focusing solely on individual characteristics, we should also consider the systems and structures that create opportunities or barriers to success. For parents and educators, it highlights the importance of providing children with opportunities for extensive practice and skill development. It also suggests we should focus on developing children's social skills and practical intelligence alongside their academic abilities. For individuals, understanding these principles can help us make more strategic decisions about our own paths to success. It encourages us to seek out opportunities for deliberate practice, to be aware of the cultural attitudes we've inherited and how they might help or hinder us, and to actively work on developing our practical intelligence and communication skills. For society as a whole, Gladwell's insights challenge us to think about how we can create more equitable systems that provide opportunities for success to a wider range of people. If small initial advantages can compound over time to create significant disparities, how can we level the playing field and ensure that talent and hard work are truly rewarded, regardless of arbitrary factors like birth month or cultural background? In conclusion, Outliers provides a fascinating new perspective on success, encouraging us to look beyond the myth of the self-made individual and consider the complex interplay of factors that create truly exceptional achievement. By understanding these principles, we can work towards creating a world where more people have the opportunity to realize their full potential. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. I hope you found these insights as thought-provoking as I have. Remember, you can find the full transcript of this episode, along with visualizations of key concepts, at ceoslibrary.com. And if you're inspired to dive deeper into these ideas, I encourage you to pick up a copy of Outliers. You'll find a link to purchase it on Amazon in the episode description. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep striving to understand the hidden factors that shape our world. This is CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf, signing off.